Moving along now, it is that time of Market Journal where we like to turn our attention over to the markets. Trade continues to be a big focus point for the markets and for ag producers alike, especially as President Donald Trump's tariff threats keep popping up in the headlines. Tredas' Doug Simon stopped by the studio on Thursday morning to give us his take on all of the information and how it's moving the markets right now. Doug, as always, there's a lot of outside noise that impacts the grain market, so I want to start our conversation on corn. December contract at the futures market currently sitting about that 490 level. Do you think we're nearing a short-term top for decent corn?
Yeah, this morning, Thursday, 485-ish, last Friday, 490, and we've had a nice rally after the announcements of tariffs and the acreage report that we had, and described it kind of like a beach ball being held underwater. It wanted to keep going higher, but now we have had a pretty decent rally. And actually, where the basis levels are today, if you're zero in Columbus, we're 490 cash last Friday, for probably 85 today. So yeah, we've had a nice little technical rally, if you want to look at it that way. We've gone to strength. The December contracts at 467 or so this morning, and again, that's up from the 440s that we had, prior to the acreage report, or around the acreage report. And so we've had a nice little bounce there. So we're looking at making incremental sales here on what we've got left on old crop, and then also looking at the new crop side of it, because we have had strength within this time frame, and which is a seasonally typically a good time to be selling corn, between February and June, if you look at that historical opportunity that's out there.
So I guess historically speaking, how aggressive do you get pricing new crop? It's the crop we're planting right now as we speak. And I think there's sometimes some hesitancy to want to make too many sales because you don't know what you're going to have come fall.
Sure. Well, we just bought crop insurance here by March 15th, which is your multi-peril crop insurance, and it's got a revenue component in it that allows you to, if you have a springtime price and a fall price, so if something happens and we have some substantially higher prices, you've got a component in there through your crop insurance. And so we'd like to look at that crop insurance guarantee that we have. If somebody raises 100,000 bushels and they have 70% crop insurance, that 70% really should be your goal if you look at the history of marketing and the concept of why, marketing in conjunction with your crop insurance. And so we'll make increments, and we're about halfway through that period, so a non-irrigated farmer in Cass County, where I'm from, might be a little bit slower than a farmer that's out in York County that's got irrigation. Your agronomic situation makes a little bit of a difference. But yeah, you want to be looking to get up toward that 40 to 50%. But from a marketing standpoint, we've been using more puts this year, just because there's a lot of uncertainty with the weather, tariffs, a lot of those different things that could be really binary, really make these markets jump. Or if you hedge, we do a lot of hedging and buy a call with it, which is a synthetic put. But there's ways, it's more about strategy. You want to get those increments, because longer term, if you look at the acres that we're going to plant on corn and the yields, projected yields, we could be back toward a 2.2 billion bushel carry out, and prices could be back toward 385. That's if everything goes well. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's what you have to prepare for mentally from a risk management standpoint. And that's what our business, that's what we're about with farmers, not necessarily, we don't like to predict where the market's going to go, but it's like, what's the opportunities?
Well, let's jump kind of from corn to soybeans, I guess. Get your thoughts on how you're entering this season. We have bounced off some of our recent lows. Do you see this as a sustainable recovery in the soybean complex, particularly in the futures market?
That's a great question. The whole tariff issue, and with China being our largest importer of soybeans, and also have been, that's one of our biggest values of exports from the U.S. to China. That's a big deal. But they've front-loaded a lot of these beans. They've bought about, I think about 28 million metric tons versus, last year about 14 million metric tons for this like April-May slot. And so and it's come from Brazil. And so that's supported prices in here, probably where the tariff side of it was real negative. It's actually, we've had a rally in here, and we're back in the 1030s on, new crop beans, and 1040-ish in the old crop beans. But yeah, you're probably maybe $1 higher than you thought we might be with all the tariff, worries going on. But then if we're going to plant 95 or 96 million acres of corn, we're only going to plant 83 million acres of beans. That's tightened up the balance sheet a little bit there. So that's given us a little bit of support on the bean side too. But a lot of it's that, I think Brazil's been buying a lot. And you've seen their basis go from $1, or from basically zero to $1 over in the last 2 months. Typically they do make an appreciation in this time frame, but it's had a pretty pretty big jump. So you can see that they've been buying beans from the market standpoint.
All right, we've covered corn and beans so far. I want to get a question for our wheat growers in here. Has to do, you shared with me that wheat funds are short. My question to you is, what's that mean for wheat producers who are looking at their crop in the ground right now?
I talked about seasonals on the corn being positive time of the year. Wheat typically has some lows, last month, and tends to maybe have some rallies in April, May, which tends to give you some opportunities price-wise. With those funds being short 100,000 contracts of corn, that's in the Chicago contract, or not as short in the KC wheat, which is our main one that we grow in this area of the state or this part of the country. But if you get some type of ongoing dry weather out there, which they're very dry, I mean, there's no doubt about it. In western Kansas, western Nebraska, areas where there's wheat growing, it's very, very dry. Now, there's some rain that's slated to come in, but they moved it this week in the forecast a little further east, and so you get something like that, you got a powder keg sitting there that can definitely, you can get a rally pretty quick with everybody being so negative. And we were that way in August of last year on the corn, and we were that way, at harvest time with corn. And so sometimes it's when everybody gets so darn negative that something trips them up, and those funds will have to cover their shorts and give us some positive price action. So there's some hope in the wheat just because everybody's so negative.